If you've spent any amount of time on the internet looking at reviews of Pixel phones, you've likely heard a lot of stuff that people will present as facts. Pixels overheat is a common one, or Pixel modems are trash is another. While there are definitely things wrong with Pixel phones, many of the criticisms you see online are actually myths that people just regurgitate without actually investigating whether or not they're true. Well, today I am going to debunk 5 myths related to Pixel phones by, actually doing the work. There are timestamps in the description if you want to jump around, but let's dive right in with the first myth, which is that Pixels overheat all the time. This is one of the most prevalent myths about Pixels. First, I hate the word overheating. For me, that suggests that the phone gets so hot that it literally doesn't function. In all my years of owning Pixel devices, that has simply never happened before. Yes, the phone has gotten warm when under heavy load, but it has never overheated. And it should be noted that all phones get hot under heavy load. That's not a flaw, that's physics.
Yes, science!
But ignoring semantics, is it true that Pixel phones get hotter than other phones? So one situation in which I've noticed my phone gets hot is when I'm using wireless Android Auto in the car. So to find out what's happening here, I pitted the Pixel 10 Pro against the OnePlus 15. I connected both phones wirelessly to my car and streamed music and navigation for 30 minutes straight. Using a thermometer gun, I tested the temps of the phones both before and after the test. Now, before I show you the numbers, I want to say that this test is set up in a way that is inherently bad for the Pixel. The OnePlus 15 is a much larger phone and has a much larger vapor chamber. It will invariably run cooler than the Pixel because of this, so the deck is already stacked against my Pixel 10 Pro. That being said, the numbers tell a different story. The Pixel actually got less hot during this test than the OnePlus 15 did by about 2.5 degrees Celsius. That's equivalent to about 4.5 degrees Fahrenheit of difference. And remember, the OnePlus 15 is the larger phone with the larger vapor chamber, so the fact that it is slightly hotter than the Pixel during this test is pretty astounding. The thing is though, that both phones felt equally hot when I picked them up during this test. I can't tell the difference between 2.5 degrees Celsius by touch alone. This is my theory on why people think Pixels run hotter than other phones. They're just touching and guessing, but in this test, the numbers prove that the Pixel 10 Pro stayed cooler. This is a very common situation for a lot of people out there, which is why I did the test this way, but I do want to acknowledge that the same principles apply if you go out on a blazing hot day and record 4K video non-stop. Your phone is going to get hot there too. But I think these results will be the same. Phones just get hot when they're working hard. It's a fact of life. Moving on to the next myth, let's talk about the modems in Pixel phones. The issue here is that at one point, the modems in Pixels weren't that great. But a lot has changed in the past 5 or so years, and the modems now are totally fine. In fact, as I'm about to show you, in certain respects, the Pixel modems outshine the top dogs across the entire industry. To do this test, I used the same speed test app on an iPhone 17 Pro, a OnePlus 15, and the Pixel 10 Pro. This gives you a good idea of what to expect from the best chips from Apple, Qualcomm, and Google. Let's start with Wi-Fi speeds. I put all 3 phones in my kitchen, which is as far away from my router as you can get without being outside. I ran 10 speed tests on all 3 phones, making sure to run them simultaneously. The results might surprise you. For Wi-Fi download speeds, the Pixel 10 Pro blew away the competition. In fact, it beat the iPhone and the OnePlus phone by more than double. In the case of the OnePlus phone, which, remember, is running the most powerful Qualcomm chip, it nearly tripled the download speed on average. For upload speeds on Wi-Fi, it's a similar story, although not nearly as drastic. The Pixel 10 Pro is still the winner, but it's only slightly better than the iPhone. But once again, the Snapdragon 8 Elite Gen 5 is in last place. My testing here shows that, for Wi-Fi, Tensor G5 in the Pixel is the best choice across the titans of the industry, and the Snapdragon in the OnePlus 15 is actually the worst choice, which you might not have expected. Okay, but what about cellular connections? The story here changes a bit. Please note that all 3 phones are connected to the T-Mobile network for this test. For cellular downloads, the Snapdragon is the winner, handily beating both the iPhone and the Pixel by a factor of 2. However, in this metric, the iPhone is surprisingly in last place, with the Pixel 10 Pro beating it by about 10% when you average the 10 scores. For cellular uploads, things change once again. The iPhone smashes the Pixel and the OnePlus phone here, but the OnePlus phone was the worst of the bunch. In fact, there were only 2 runs in which the OnePlus 15 broke past 1 megabit per second, which is pretty sad. So what do these numbers tell us? They confirm that the Exynos 5400 modem, which appears in all of these Pixel phones, is far from the worst you can get. In fact, it actually beats the most powerful Apple chip and the most powerful Qualcomm chip in multiple metrics. And across all 4 tests, there isn't one in which the Pixel comes in last when you average the 10 runs. It's either first or second across the board. Of course, this test doesn't address things like call quality, the number of dropped calls you have, or other anecdotal situations. All I can say for that is, in my experience, that has never been a problem on any Pixel I've owned. But yeah, the core takeaway here is that the next time someone tries to say that Pixel modems suck, you can tell them they are dead wrong. Definitively.
Wrong, 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 wrong. Wrong, 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 wrong. You're wrong, you're wrong, you're wrong.
Oh, and speaking of telling people stuff, it's time for me to tell you to like and subscribe. I also have a Discord you should check out where you can talk with me and other tech fans about phones, laptops, cat photos, or whatever else is on your mind. The link for that is in the description. Come on over and hang with us. The next myth on the list here is that Pixel phones are terrible for gaming. This myth stems from very real benchmark scores. As you can see here, when you benchmark Tensor G5 inside the Pixel 10 Pro XL against the Snapdragon 8 Elite Gen 5 inside the OnePlus 15, the Snapdragon processor completely decimates the Tensor processor. Like, it's not even a contest. To make things really fun, here's the same test with the Pixel literally on ice while running the benchmark, which gives it an unfair advantage, and the Snapdragon still blows it away. So people see footage like this and then say that Pixels can't game. The problem with these numbers though is that they mean little in the real world. To prove this, here is some footage of me playing the game Wuthering Waves on a Google Pixel 10 using the balanced graphics quality mode. Note that this is not the Pro or the Pro XL, just the regular Pixel 10. This is one of the most graphically intensive games you can get on the Play Store, and it's running just fine here. So you can imagine how well the phone would run Candy Crush or Fortnite. To add further proof, here's an FPS counter tracking real-time stats. As you can see, it's at a very solid 30 frames per second, and if I wanted more frames, I have plenty of room to drop the quality to get there. So yeah, the proof is right here. Pixels can game just fine. Of course, hardcore mobile gamers watching this will say that any flagship smartphone should be able to pull 60 frames per second at maximum settings, and the Pixel can't hit that. That's a fine argument to make, but I would simply say back that if mobile gaming is that important to you, then a Pixel just isn't the phone you're looking for. Regardless, the myth I'm trying to debunk is the idea that Pixels can't game at all. That's simply not true, as Wuthering Waves at 30 frames per second is perfectly playable, and even the base model Pixel can do it. I will also admit that gaming through the Play Store isn't the only way people game. Lots of people use emulators to play older console titles, or even emulate an x86 environment to play modern PC games on their phone. For gaming in those scenarios, yes, even the most powerful Pixel won't work well for you. For emulation, there's pretty much nothing better than a Snapdragon processor with the latest turnip drivers. But my guess is 99% of the people watching this have no idea what I just said. They think of turnips as vegetables. For the vast majority of mobile gamers, they are just downloading things from the Play Store, and that's it. For those people, the Pixel will work great for you, even on the most demanding titles. And anyone who says otherwise is just perpetuating a myth. We've covered 3 of the 5 myths now, so let's get right to the 4th one. The battery life of Pixels sucks. Now, I will fully admit that Pixels don't have the best battery life in the industry. Given that we have Chinese phones with silicon carbon cells going well beyond 7,000 milliamp hours of energy, there's simply no way any Pixel will ever take the battery crown across all of Android. But There's a huge difference between saying Pixel battery life isn't leading the industry and saying that Pixel battery life sucks. Instead, it's far more accurate to say that Pixel battery life isn't the best, but is still really good. To back that up, I'm going to show you some objective battery testing data from Android Authority. For those of you who don't know, my day job is at Android Authority, so I have access to all of our testing data. To test the battery life of phones, we look at 5 different workloads: Zoom calls, web browsing, using the camera, recording 4K video, and playing back 4K video. We test these metrics under very strict conditions and then extrapolate the number of minutes a phone could do one of those 5 things. This makes it easy to compare phones across brands, battery capacities, and even across operating systems while still keeping things totally fair. So here's a chart showing you how a Pixel 10 compares to an iPhone 17 Pro. Now, the Pixel 10 does have a slightly bigger battery than the iPhone 17 Pro, but the iPhone costs about $300 more, so one would hope you'd get better battery life out of it. But our data shows that the Pixel beats the iPhone in 4 out of the 5 tests. Also, note how it completely obliterated the iPhone in the web browsing test. The Pixel can last 3 times as long as an iPhone for that. Moving away from iPhones, here's the Google Pixel 10 Pro XL compared to the Samsung Galaxy S26 Ultra. This is a bit fairer of a fight, but the Pixel still wins out in 3 out of the 5 workloads. And just to make sure you don't think I'm cherry picking results, here is the Pixel 10 Pro XL versus the OnePlus 15. Remember, the OnePlus 15 has a silicon carbon battery in it that holds roughly 40% more energy when compared to the Pixel. But look at the scores. The Pixel beats the OnePlus 15 in web browsing time and is very, very close in 2 other metrics. So even when you compare it to a phone with 40% more juice, the Pixel is still doing just fine. So yeah, the myth here is that Pixel battery life sucks. It doesn't suck. Is it going to win any battery life awards? No. But just because something isn't the best doesn't mean it sucks. We're at the final myth here, and it's a big one. Pixels are overpriced. This is the trickiest myth to debunk because value is subjective. Just as an example, I spent over $300 on this tea maker from Breville. I drink about 4 cups of tea a day, and having a machine make the perfect cup every time and have it automatically ready for me when I wake up each morning, that's worth $300 to me. But you might hate tea, and even if you like it, the idea of spending that much money on something like this might seem totally crazy. So that's kind of the problem with Pixel phones. For me, and a lot of Pixel fans watching this, the amount of money we spent on our phones is totally worth it. For what we spent, we got a beautifully designed phone with some of the best bloat-free software you can get. We get 7 years of support and are usually the first to get the latest Android updates. There are amazing cameras and unique features you can't get on any other phone. To us, all that stuff is really important, and we are happy to spend for it. But for someone who doesn't care about any of that stuff, or simply cares more about the things that Pixels don't have, they would say that Pixels are overpriced. Remember that benchmark footage I showed you of the Pixel 10 Pro XL and the OnePlus 15? Many people would see those numbers and say that since the Pixel is about half as powerful as the OnePlus 15, then it should be half the price. But that just doesn't make any sense. The value of a phone isn't just numbers on a sheet. It's what it does for you that no other phone does, how it makes you feel, how long you plan to have it, how many family members also have the same phone, how many other products you have from the same brand. There's so much more to value than specs and benchmarks. What I'm trying to say here is that the myth that Pixels are overpriced is only true for you if you think that way. And you know what? That's fine. If you think Pixels are overpriced, don't buy one. But don't go around telling people they shouldn't buy one either. Because... well, that's just like your opinion, man. Anyway, thanks so much for watching. Please don't forget to like and subscribe. If you want to hear more about why I love Pixels so much, check out this video here, where I touch on a lot of the features that Pixels have that other phones don't. I'm sure you all are going to have a lot to say about this video, so I'll see you all down in the comments.